As some of you old heads will know, it's been a tough 25 years for the Chicago Bears, but there have been some bright spots, and that's what we're going to talk about here tonight and mention our all-century team.
Huddle up! Huddle up, Halas Huddlers. As always, I'm Rob Shores with Bear Goggles On. We got the whole crew this evening, Bob and Justin. It's going to be a good show, but before we get into it, I want to preface this by go to the comment section as we're going through this. There's going to be a little bit of some debates here going back and forth, and we want to hear from you who you think, hey, look, we're all around the same age, like basically 40. We're just going to say 40. And there are some guys out there that like maybe some of the older generation, maybe you think differently. Some of the younger generation, maybe you think differently. So go to that comment section and tell us where we're wrong, names that need to be put in different places. Let us know. As Justin mentioned, we are creating the best of the best over the last 25 years for the Chicago Bears. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, we're going to keep it fun. It's not too serious, but it's a fun debate. We're going to look at some of these positions. There's lots of guys who are kind of equal. Some positions because there's so many good guys, and some positions because there's not any good guys at all. But it's going to be a lot of fun kind of with this quarter-century team.
And we must say, we are looking at what they have done for the Chicago Bears. So what they did before they got to the Chicago Bears, what they did after was not considered in our selections.
So you're saying Joe Thuney did not make the list?
Not yet.
Minicamp was good, but I don't think it's enough to get him on the quarter-century team.
All right. Makes sense. Hall of Famer for sure, but not part of this team here that we're putting together. So let's get into it.
Yeah.
All right. Where quarterbacks go to die. So there's some names available, right? Mitch Trubisky. We got Caleb Williams, obviously, Justin Fields, Jay Cutler, even Jim Miller. Our consensus, though, and it was pretty easy. It went straight across the board. Jay Cutler.
That's right. I mean, he had a run here. Put it that way. I tend to think it was a lot better than people are remembering it to be. But I mean, he was productive. He got every major record for the Bears, and he did it in these past 25 years. So it really kind of is a no-brainer to put him on this team.
The problem with Cutler is like there was so much hype when the Bears got him and so much hope, and he probably never met the excitement that there was in acquiring him. But he was solid. He was fairly consistent. And he's the best the Bears have had, which, again, as says at the bottom of the screen, so far, Chicago has not been friendly to quarterbacks. But as far as it goes, I think Cutler by far is the best we've had. Now, obviously, if we do this list in a few more years, we hope that he's got some competition with Caleb Williams. But as far as I'm considering it, Williams hasn't shown us enough yet, obviously. Just 1 year. If that's his floor, though, then I'm excited that maybe we could throw him in there when we do this list in a few years.
Yeah, so this is what makes it easy. As of right now, Jay Cutler holds the second most passing yards in a season, the third most passing yards in a season, the fourth most passing yards in the season, the sixth most passing yards in a season, right? Like that, it just right there, it's just too easy to make him this guy, right? Obviously Eric Kramer's the top, but he doesn't fall into that last 25 years. Like Justin said, Caleb Williams, Mitch Trubisky's in there. He's in the top 10 guys, but not worthy enough of this particular team. Honestly, that 7-3 start, if he didn't get hurt that year, I think that was the year. Was it 2010?
I think 2010 is right. Yeah.
Justin, you mentioned the day that they traded for him and he didn't live up to that hype. I, to this day, still remember it being April 2nd and thought that it was a late April Fool's joke. I was pumped, and I think most Bears fans were. He was coming off that the 2008 Pro Bowl year that he had with Denver. Things just didn't go as planned, but it's easily Jay Cutler. Let us know though if you think it's anyone else. I don't know how you go anywhere differently.
Well, and I want to say one more thing, not just for selecting quarterbacks for this whole process. Bob and Rob, I don't know how much thought you put into it, but where does team success come into this? Because Cutler did at least get them to the playoffs. here one time, I believe. So that also
Yeah.
is something to consider. But there haven't been enough playoff trips, I wouldn't
Yeah,
say.
I just kind of laugh at that because it's like, how much team success has there been in the last 25 years? What is it, 5, 6 playoffs, maybe 7? I don't even know.
I think 5, 6.
Okay, and as we go through this list, right, there's lots of ways to debate it. There's longevity, there's peak, and so like Cutler, it's a longevity pick, you know.
Yep. All right, let's move on to the skill positions.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So first up is going to be the running back spot. This team, in my opinion, over the years has been known for pretty much two positions, linebackers and running backs, right? Like, I think that's where most people think of what people think of when they think of the Chicago Bears. And, I say touchdown factory here, and that's a little bit of a, because there weren't enough. Let's be honest. The offense is not good over the years. In fact, the one area where I think our guy here, the consensus pick, struggled to make a name for himself was touchdowns. But I still think he was the guy, and that guy was Matt Forte, right? Matt Forte was he was the epitome of like what you would see nowadays with guys who can catch the ball out of the backfield. He was like that first guy, that 102 catch season he had. I kind of wish that record still held. He was a workhorse. That was his nickname. And he got that nickname for a reason. And he was one of my favorite all-time players. I struggle to not like put him up at the top. It helps that I interviewed him that one time. So like now he's kind of like a little peg higher. But it's just one of those things where like I drafted him his rookie year. He helped me win my fantasy football league that year. I don't know. Justin, what were your thoughts here on Matt Forte?
Yeah, it was easy for me. Like you said, all around back and consistent. You could depend on him. He did whatever they needed him to do, which was a lot because he played on some bad teams. He played on some good teams, but I thought it was easy to pick Forte. The only player that entered my mind that I even wanted to give some credit to was Montgomery, because to me, he reminded me a lot of Forte in the fact that he could do a lot of things for you, and he was fairly reliable at it. But when we compare those two players, Forte did more and he did it longer. And so it was easy for me. Matt Forte, and I agree, one of my favorite players of all time for the Bears.
Yeah, I mean, Matt Forte is just a no-brainer pick here. I mean, he also had, 8-9 year run here, a couple Pro Bowls. So, I mean, he's kind of got that Cutler. I was here for so many years, was productive, but he was also good, which is great. And as we get to these next couple of positions here, like Matt Forte could have actually made our receiver list. Since 2000, he has the most receptions as a Chicago Bear and the second most receiving yards. So he's just an all-around player, all-around stud, an all-around good guy. Like Rob mentioned, you did interview him on this channel about 8 months ago or so now. So anyone watching this is curious to see just what kind of a good guy he really is. Go back and check out that interview.
Unfortunately, I must say one more thing about him, though. I don't feel like he's going to be a Hall of Famer, but I feel like he's that Hall of Very Good,
and 100%.
Hopefully maybe the Bears will recognize him at some point down the line. But
yeah, definitely Hall of Very Good. I will say, he's also a guy who made it in the top 10 for all-purpose yards in a single season. When you had guys like Gale Sayers in there multiple times, Walter Payton in there multiple times, he was 8th on the list. So definitely worthy, I think, of this thing here. Another name that I definitely want to put in this category as an honorable mention is Thomas Jones. Someone who I felt like should have kept getting the ball in the Super Bowl, right? I think if I recall correctly, was it Cedric Benson who they started giving the ball to in the Super Bowl, and it just did not go as well. And they tried to throw the ball with Rex Grossman, which also didn't go as well. But yeah, I don't know. Thomas Jones to me, I know he wasn't here for very long, but definitely a guy who made an impact on how I think, of this 25 years. I don't think there's much to talk about when we get to the next position. It's fullback, and to me, it's Jason McKee. I mean, is there anyone else, Bob?
No.
He's just honored to be considered a skill position, I think.
Yeah.
There's nothing against Jason McKee. Another great guy, good guy. He's still around in the media. He still does a lot of things in the community. Nothing against him. Just the position is just not really a thing in the NFL anymore, and he was really good at it for while he was here, and it was an easy decision to put him on here.
Yeah, head coach of Mount Carmel now. Also, met him a couple times. Also a great guy just off the field. So, all right. I think this one is going to be one that's going to be talked about a little bit. I got ahead of myself here. Is the wide receiver position. And before I throw it up there, for those of you who paused the screen and can go back and look at it, Brandon Marshall was a consensus pick for us. You two both had Alshon Jeffrey, so he also made the list. He was not on my list. And then Justin and I both had Marty Booker, so he made the list but wasn't on Bob's list. So those are the three, okay, that made our all consensus team. Bob, you want to talk about the guy who didn't make that, what was on your list?
I'd rather talk about Alshon Jeffrey a little bit because, Rob, I was shocked that he wasn't on your list because you were all about him in the draft. You were pumped that he got here, and then he outperformed his draft status. He is the Bears' leading receiver since the year 2000. All right. He had 4 very productive years here, a couple Pro Bowls. You go back and doing this exercise, there's actually been a few pockets of pretty decent receivers here, but I mean, have a guy a long run just hasn't happened. So now you're just talking about peaks. And his 4 years or 5 years here with the Bears was about as good as it's gotten in Bears history. So I think that he's a no-brainer for this team.
Yeah, so I will defend the reason why he didn't make my list. And I was on him. I have an autographed photo of him. He's an amazing player, somebody who I wanted them to get. This was like one of the first times that like I did a little bit of scouting in that draft class. But the soft tissue issues that kept him on and off the field, the way that he left Chicago, I don't know. It was just like a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth and I know that's kind of weird for me to say that when I'm going to bring up the guy who did make my list, and that was DJ Moore. I know we prefaced this on what they have done for the Bears. I just think that DJ Moore is a better player. And if I look at his whole body of work, I know it was in Carolina, but he's just an all-around better wide receiver. I couldn't put him in this list, or not put him in this list. I couldn't.
So looking again, and I stuck very much to this, what they did with the Bears. So Brandon Marshall was with the Bears for only 3 seasons. Now, 2 of those seasons, he eclipsed 1,000 yards and over 100 catches in both those seasons with double-digit touchdowns in both. So he was automatically in. But if you look at Alshon Jeffrey, let me count the years real quick.
Sorry, about 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah.
2 seasons over 1,000 yards, just like Brandon Marshall. Now, the catches weren't quite as high. The touchdown totals weren't quite as high. But like Bob said, he made the Pro Bowl one of those years. And for me, if you did it you developed with the team, that's already puts you a little bit ahead in my mind as well, as opposed to, again, almost like with Cutler, they brought Marshall in already as like a finished product. Hey, you need to produce. And he sure as heck did, at least for those first 2 seasons. Whereas it's impressive to me that Alshon was able to do that in his 2nd year in the whole league and 3rd year in the league, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons.
The guy we did put on the list, Marty Booker, he was drafted in 99. So he had 5 years with the Bears, 4 years in this century that we're talking about here. And he had a very similar run to Alshon Jeffrey, actually. So more catches, and he had a couple 1,000-yard receivers. So he's very deserving of this list. He shipped out before the Super Bowl year, so I think that kind of a couple years before the Super Bowl year, so I think that kind of makes people not remember exactly how good and how productive he was. But 2001 season, 100 catches, and the next season 97 catches. I mean, that's just a super productive guy. Back in that age where we were still all forming our diehard Bears fandom, and he was right in the middle of all that.
So now I guess this would be the time to bring up who Bob had as his 3rd, and he was an honorable mention on my list. Some people might be wondering, what about Allen Robinson? And for me, him and Booker, I was going back and forth on Robinson and Booker, and I could honestly see the argument for Robinson because I do feel maybe his stats might have been a little better. I did give the slight edge to Booker with his Pro Bowl selection, although like I went back to and everyone laughed at me, Robinson was with the team for 2 playoff runs. So as far as team success, that's monumental for a Bears player to be in 2 different playoff runs in just a 4-year span. So Bob, why did you have Robinson on your list?
It was the combination of, again, he had a nice 4-year run with the Bears, so right about the same level we're talking about with all these other wide receivers. And like you said, the team success. And I was actually shocked to realize he didn't make a Pro Bowl at all with the Bears during this process. Not that that's the end all be all of individual success, but yeah, just the productivity in a time where he was the only guy and he still got his. And it was just, it's just something that I thought was worth bringing onto this list. And to Rob's point, yeah, I understand that DJ Moore's a better receiver, but, he's kind of been here for 2 years with, I would almost say, negative team success. So it was just, giving props to a super productive guy during a pretty good era of Bears football, relatively speaking.
The good thing is that I don't think it would matter who. I mean, they've had some good receivers, and that's something to point out here on a team that has struggled with passing, right? Like that's pretty amazing. All right, let's move on to tight end. We had the same guy here. It's kind of interesting that we had the same guy, and I almost didn't include him on this list, but it was Greg Olsen. Never should have been shipped out. Fuck you, Mike Martz. Jay Cutler said it best. Yeah, I look, if you look at the whole career, I mean, the guy is clearly a Hall of Famer, right? Like the guy deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. His early starts here in Chicago, not as great stat-wise, obviously, as he did in Carolina, but some good years, 8 touchdowns 1 year, over 600 yards, 108 targets with 60 catches. That was his best year. Didn't make any Pro Bowls with Chicago. But I blame the front office for him not reaching the level of potential that he should be. I don't remember who went first, so jump in, somebody.
I mean, this is almost like with you, it's like the reverse Alshon Jeffrey. Like Jeffrey left with a bad taste in your mouth of what's going on, and like Greg Olsen was always like the one that got away. So it's almost like us putting him on this list is like, we're so sorry, Greg. Like you should have been here the whole time, and you deserve to be here. But the other guy who probably might actually deserve to be on this list is Martellus Bennett. The guy had an amazing run while he was here. It was just 3 years, but he had more catches and yards and touchdowns than Greg Olsen did in his 4 years. So, sorry, Martellus, but, Hall of Famer who got away is definitely something that we want to recognize here.
Interesting thing, too, is if you actually look at Cole Kmet's statistics so far in his career, kind of comparable to what Olsen did just in Chicago. So even Kmet, I think, could get a tip of the hat here as an honorable mention. I'd love to see what he can do maybe this year and next to add to his totals with Chicago. But Bob, like you said, Martellus Bennett, from a statistical standpoint, probably should have gotten the nod here.
And if we're talking who might be on the mid-century team, I mean, first-round pick, you got to hope Colson Loveland is in this conversation.
That would be nice.
Yeah, that would be nice. All right, let's move down to the trenches. All right. We're going to start with the one that's probably the most important, for at least has been for many years. It's been a little bit of a shift recently. I feel like a lot of people are going the inside versus the outside look here. But we're going to start with the tackles. All right. And I think people are going to be a little bit shocked on who is making our list here. And there wasn't an argument between the three of us.
If you're shocked, it's because you've never actually gone through this exercise.
Yes, that is what it is. All right, let's put the names up there. All right, Big Cat Williams, I think, is obvious, but it's Charles Leno. It's Charles Leno.
There just wasn't another tackle that had a longer run that was better. Like it's just like. And
Marcus Webb, anybody?
Charles Leno is like, there's nothing wrong with being a league average starter, but it's just when you're putting together a all-century team or all-quarter-century team, you want something better than just a pretty good starter for 7 years or 6 years, whatever he did.
But it's kind of like what they always say about offensive linemen is like, if your name doesn't get called, you probably did decent enough. And I feel like that's what he was. Like, he didn't stand out as like an all-pro, like you said, but he was pretty consistent, reliable, and if I'm correct, a 7th-round pick, right? Is that right?
7th-round pick out of Boise State, yeah.
So that's a pretty impressive thing to actually cement yourself, have a career. After he left Chicago, went on to be that for Washington.
Starter for Washington.
Yeah. So, and then when you look at just the list of other names, no one else did what he did. So
I have the list here. Blake Brockemeyer. Anybody want him over Leno? Mike Gandy at left tackle. Anybody want him over Leno? John St. Clair, right? Like, he was supposed to be something, never amounted to anything. Orlando Pace sounds great on paper, but it was not the Rams version of Orlando Pace here in Chicago.
Ken Griffey Jr.
There we go. Exactly. I already mentioned Jamarcus Webb. The only thing I recall from his time here was getting a shoulder check from Jay Cutler on the sideline. Jermon Bushrod was actually good for the Saints, but not that great for Chicago. Yeah. We already said Charles Leno. Jason Peters, again, another good guy. And look, he had one really good year here filling in, right, at left tackle. But it wasn't like what he did with the Eagles. And then now you're at Braxton Jones, who is now the version of Charles Leno.
Right.
I want to upgrade there.
Not as long.
Right. So I will say three guys that actually did give real consideration to before finally settling on Big Cat and Leno were Bobby Massey, who had a nice run here. He was solid. Again, just basically Leno's counterpart of just being league average. He might have been a little bit below league average, but solid run. And then John Tate, who was a tackle in the mid 2000, the first 10 years of the team, who was okay. And honestly, I almost put Darnell Wright on this team. Like, he's clearly the most talented tackle that this team has had in the last 25 years, and he's been fine. So it was like almost like, all right, well, if there's nobody else, let's just put the best player on this team. But at the end of the day, I just think you got to give longevity a little bit more credit here.
Yeah, and I focus a little bit more left tackle versus right tackle. But yes, a lot of those guys that you mentioned were a better version at right tackle than these other guys were at left tackle. So
right.
I think what you just mentioned there, Rob, I did not consider very often, and you'll definitely see that when we get to the defensive side of the ball. So,
all right, let's move on really quick to guard. There's some better names, I feel like, at guard, but we settled on two, Roberto Garza and Kyle Long. Bob, I know you were high on Garza, so why don't you take this one to start?
Yeah, so Roberto Garza was one that stood out. Like, I was looking at a Pro Football Reference. They have a value called approximate value, whatever it does. But he was by far the highest guard in this. Like, he's the 28th best player in Bears history, apparently, according to Pro Football Reference. So it was kind of I didn't know who else to take, and that was kind of a no-brainer. So, I mean, he was here from 2005 to 2014, so obviously on the Super Bowl team and here for a long time, being just a good, solid player. So as soon as I saw that, I was like, yeah, easy selection. And
then with Kyle Long, I mean, there's a lot of promise with him. He actually moved to the position of guard. I think we didn't always see the best out of him with injuries, unfortunately, but just from a raw talent standpoint, and maybe there's a little bias because he kind of was a fan favorite. But I think consensus pick for us. Played long enough to get that consideration.
I will say, going through this exercise made me really appreciate Kyle Long, because I had Cody Whitehair on here at first, and then I went back. Rob, you had Kyle Long, so let me go take a look at Kyle Long. I think it's so much easier to remember the end of his career. Kyle Long made a Pro Bowl in each of his first 3 seasons. So he did play here for 6 or 7 seasons, and the peak of that is as good as any offensive lineman has had for this team in these 25 years. So once I went through that, I was like, that was, yes, Kyle Long, we all like you, and you were really good. You got a spot on this team.
Yeah, he was also second team All-Pro his sophomore year, and yeah, they screwed him by moving him all around. But only offensive lineman jersey I'll ever own, and one of my favorites, and I still wear it often. Yeah, and look, I own it, and I don't own this next guy, and I don't think anyone will argue that the best center in this 25 years, this quarter century, was Olin Kreutz. There's nothing really to talk about here. Whether you like him on or off the field, whatever your thing, on the field, he was the best center that they've had. And what's amazing is how bad center has been since he has been gone, except for the little bit of Roberto Garza, by the way, who filled in, right?
Right.
I'm really hoping Drew Dahlman changes things.
Real quick, I just pulled up that AV chart, and I don't know how well you studied it, Bob, but where's Olin Kreutz on that? Any guesses? All-time Bears?
Number 12.
Well, thanks for looking. Number 12 overall. Right below Matt Forte, by the way.
Matt Forte, yeah. So, I mean, that's one thing about Olin Kreutz. We were all obviously we're going with Olin Kreutz, but I mean, he's maybe the one player that we've gone through so far on offense that I am most confident will still be on this team, on the mid-century team, right? Like, he was just so good for so long.
All right, we're going to move on to defense. This is going to go faster because we didn't have as much back and forth, I feel like. But real quick, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, go to the comment section. Let's continue this conversation because I'm going to kind of speed through these ones a little bit on the back end here. All right. defensive tackle, defensive end, obviously both here in the trenches. Again, no back and forth here. We both had Julius Peppers, Julius Pepperwood for the New Girl fans out there, and Khalil Mack. I think it's just pretty obvious that these two were the most dominant ends that the Bears have seen, even though they were here for a short amount of time. Anyone want to touch on anything here outside of these two guys?
Well, they're both Hall of Famers, and they still were performing at that level when they were with the Bears. So that's my quick version, but go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I mean, that plus, I think Alex Brown and Adewale Gunia deserve a mention here. I mean, Wale also had kind of a short tenure, so maybe it's more Alex Brown here. Alex Brown's body of work for the Bears, probably he deserves a mention in this episode about it. But it's just unfortunately for him and his career, there's two other Hall of Fame players who played like Hall of Famers while they were here. And so they just got to make this list. But Alex Brown, your impact is not gone unnoticed in this process.
Yeah. Apologies if you guys heard my alarm just go off.
Wouldn't have known until you told us.
All right.
Yeah. So defensive tackles was,
Yeah, we got, again, Tommy Harris, Akeem Hicks. To me, Tommy Harris is the best defensive tackle this team has had in I don't know how long. Unfortunately, his knees just could not keep up. Akeem Hicks, probably the best free agent signing that Ryan Pace ever made. That's all I got to say on these two. I'll go to Bob first on this one.
Yeah, I mean, going through this process, there was really nobody else who even stood out. I mean, Tommy Harris is one of my all-time favorite Bears. It's just it's almost like a Derrick Rose type situation for me, where the peak of his early career was just so high, and I was so excited about him. And then just the injuries, and he just was never that guy again. And Akeem Hicks is just a guy you love to root for. You love he was on your team. The guy was a monster.
When I thought about other guys at this position, I had names coming in my head. Tank Johnson was one. Eddie Goldman was one. But when I actually went back and looked at their statistical output, now I know at defensive tackle, sometimes it's not all about the stats. It just wasn't anywhere near what I remembered or thought of the impact. And the two that we did put on there, that's not the case. You knew their impact. You felt their impact. And so it was obvious that those were the two.
Yeah, I thought this choice was going to be a lot harder when it started. And then you go through it, it's no, it was pretty clean cut.
Rob, you wanted to mention some.
I will say in the next 25 years, Jervon Dexter is going to be in that group.
There you go. I hope so. That'd be awesome. That would be awesome.
All right, let's move on to linebackers. Look, Moss is the midway. Again, I said it earlier. This is the position that everyone thinks of outside of running back when you think of the Chicago Bears, the history that's there. And one guy kept that up, and that's Brian Urlacher. Got the gold jacket. His counterpart, Lance Briggs, was another guy that easily made our list. And look, Roquan Smith, as much as I say it was the right move to trade him, you can't not put him on the list. You just can't. So those were our three. Again, not a big, argument back and forth here. Justin, I'll go to you first. Any thoughts here?
Well, first of all, when you talk about Briggs playing alongside Urlacher, it's kind of like the Scottie Pippen to the Michael Jordan. You might not get as much recognition, but he was very, very good in his own right. I don't think he'll be a Hall of Famer. I don't know. I don't think he will, but
he's like Matt Forte.
I wouldn't be shocked if he did, but he played very, very well on good Bears teams with the Lovie Smith defense and all that. Now with Roquan, high production right from the get-go, Pro Bowl caliber player, and I know, Rob, when you were talking about it, if we had to set them up and say who's playing where, I don't care. Put those three out there. They're going to produce for you in great ways. So it was easy. The only name that kind of I wanted to shout out was maybe Roosevelt Colvin, but really just because he was a good producer while he was here. But all three of the people we put in are hands down above him. So pretty easy selections.
Yeah, I mean, Roquan was supposed to be that next linebacker in the whole lineage of middle linebackers for the Bears, and he fulfilled that for his time here. Unfortunately, new regime comes in. They don't see eye to eye in contracts and whatever. He gets moved out. But his 4.5 years here were everything he was supposed to be as a top 10 pick. 2 second-team All-Pros that were here, and then that year he got traded, he was a first-team All-Pro. So, I mean, he's a stud and, easily one of the best 3 linebackers in the past 25 years.
I will say that I'm a little disappointed. Maybe we'll have a side position here, but probably the best looking linebacker was Abercrombie and Fitch model Hunter Hillenmeyer. Did not make the list, unfortunately. So, all right, moving on to defensive backs.
Different list, Rob.
All right, we got the corners and the safeties. Probably one of the strongest position groups on this current roster, but how has it been over the last 25 years? We're going to start with the cornerback position, and here's a guy who I think better make the Hall of Fame, and if he doesn't, I'm going to be very disappointed. Like if either Matt Forte or Lance Briggs gets in and Charles Peanut Tillman does not make it in, I would have a really, really hard time swallowing that, but easily makes our list, Charles Tillman. And then the other one is the current cornerback, and that's Jalen Johnson. Justin, what do you think here? I mean, do you agree with me on Tillman, first of all? And then also, do you think Jalen Johnson is on his way to, potentially getting to that point too?
We'll see. I agree with you on the Tillman point. I think you and Bob did a short. Most career touchdowns as a defender was Charles Tillman. He created a play. I mean, other teams, not just Bears, talk about the peanut punch. And it wasn't like it was luck. It was something he brought to his game, and it mattered. It changed games. So high impact on the field. Throw on top of that, he's actually a good dude too. And I believe a leader amongst those teams, which once again, the Lovie Smith era actually was. I mean, Bears haven't been great, but that was a time where you were like, hey, this team is at least a competitive team. And he was a huge part of that. So, yes, for me, Tillman was an easy selection. I hope he gets in the Hall of Fame. I don't know his chances. And then Jalen, his career is still young, but the trajectory right now is in the right direction. If he can string together some more seasons like he started to, I'm very curious to see what he does in a Dennis Allen system where he might get to just follow the number one around. You start shutting down number ones week after week after week, you develop a reputation as being that all pro level player. So those two were very easy for me.
I messed the banner up. We actually had 3 corners, and I forgot Kyle Fuller is also on this list.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I mean, modern NFL now, there's a nickelback, and, Kyle Fuller might not have been specifically a nickelback, but I think he moved in and out, and he definitely could. He had that kind of run presence, run defense presence, and he had an all-pro year here. He had a really nice run for this team, so happy to have Kyle Fuller on this quarter century team as well.
All right, well, let's go to safeties. I almost left this game. It was Bears versus Browns. I think everyone who is old enough to know already knows where I'm going with this, but it was Bears versus Browns, and it was an overtime game that we almost left because we didn't think it was going to happen, and went to overtime, and then won almost immediately by Mike Brown. Mike Brown, interception for a touchdown. Just took control of that game. And I want to say it was back-to-back games he did that in, or it was like
49ers the very next week, I think.
Okay, there we go. And then the other one is someone who I think is very underappreciated here in Chicago, someone who I've championed on this show many, many times, and that's Eddie Jackson. So I was glad to see you guys both agreed with me on him. Bob, I'll go to you first here. What do you think about Eddie Jackson and Mike Brown?
I love them both. I think I'm glad we got them both on this team. Maybe we, instead of going free safety, strong safety, going 2 safeties, we were able to get them both on here. But Mike Brown was an absolute stud. Some of you younger Halas Huddlers might not really understand how good he was because Urlacher and Briggs and those guys get all the credit. But he was every bit the leader, like emotionally, intelligently, like he was the quarterback of that defense. He was so good. And unfortunately, some injuries just kind of got in the way. But Mike Brown's an absolute stud and, might be honestly one of the best players on this entire list. So I'm excited to get to talk about him here.
Mike Brown for me is like the Matt Forte of the defense. Just one of my favorite players, the way he played. And actually I looked, the San Francisco game was the week before the Cleveland one, but I knew it was back-to-back weeks where he had a pick 6 to end the game. And Eddie Jackson, I mean, I think Rob, like you mentioned with some other player, how he left and maybe some of the years he played weren't the best. But when he was at his best with the Bears, he was a ball hawk, a game changer, a game wrecker. And found ways to make an impact in the game. And so that's what you look for out of a safety. And he delivered on that on many occasions. Now, was his tackling always the best? Things like that. We could nitpick, but he's definitely deserving of this honor.
Bob, I can't remember where he was on our list. I know Tillman, I think you said it had 8, if I recall, right? Touchdown returns.
Tillman had 8 interceptions and 1 fumble. I think it was 9 total.
Okay. And Eddie Jackson was on that list, but I can't remember where he fell. But I will say, if I recall, there might have been 2 or 3 that were called back because of stupid penalties towards the end of his career.
That's true.
So if those counted, he'd be up there as well.
Right up there. That's right.
All right. Adam Hogue's favorite part of football. Okay. Special teams, right? I don't even really know how to go through this order real quick. I guess I'm just going to throw it on the screen.
Yeah, just throw it up there because this one was super straightforward. We all had the exact same 5 guys. Oh, actually, no, Rob.
Rob disagrees on one.
I had one that the Taylor one was a joke, right? I had a little smiley face on there.
That's not even what I was referring to. But
okay, yeah. So I did have one different one, and as you can see at the bottom, our kicker is Robbie Gould. I think it's pretty obvious. Brad Maynard, obviously, I mean, he was here for many years during this 25 years, but just one of the better punters that this team has seen. I did go back to see, like, where did Sauerbraun fall in? Because I was curious, because he's just another guy that, like, sticks out in my mind, right? But another player with Carolina-Chicago connection. It's very strange how these two connect so much. Long snapper is Patrick Manley, and if anyone thinks differently, you do not understand the game of long snapping. I am sorry, but the guy was, like, unbelievably consistent, and that's what you want out of your long snapper, to the point where he puts on long snapping camps now. But here's where we differed a little bit. So kick returner, you guys both had Cordarrelle Patterson. We obviously both had Devin Hester as a punt returner. I had Devin Hester at both. And look, I know the stats show Cordarrelle Patterson is the better kick returner. If I recall looking at it, he has the better, like, average kick return yards per attempt. His touchdowns, I think, are even, or maybe one more here in Chicago. But when I look at Devin Hester, yes, his punt returning was better. He's the reason why kick returns changed. And it's the reason why they look, the Colts fucking kicked to him and then realized they shouldn't have. So that right there puts him over top for me. I just can't not have him at both positions.
Yeah, I understand that argument completely. I think when you look at the numbers, especially longevity, like Devin Hester is the best kick returner in Chicago Bears history, let alone last 24 years. I mean, let alone NFL history. Like, I get it, but it was a nod to another guy I was really excited about being here, who was excellent while he was here in Cordarrelle Patterson. And so rather than, Devin Hester is going to get his love, so let's just bring another guy in.
I almost put him a wide receiver. No, I'm just joking.
Yeah, right.
Or corner.
He's the Travis Hunter.
Yeah, but you can't say enough good things about Devin Hester. I mean, the guy is just the best in NFL history. Super Bowl opening kickoff for the Super Bowl. I mean, who does that, right? That wasn't a punt. That was a kickoff. So, yeah, you want to put Devin Hester as your kickoff returner just because of that one play. The most exciting play in Chicago sports history, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, put him
Go
up.
back to what our old intro for when we, it wasn't just me and Justin, right? Like, we had that as,
Right.
like, the actual audio, and like both of you and I said, like, many times, like, it just pumps you up for the show.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Justin, what do you think?
The only regret I have is I almost was gonna wager on him getting the first touchdown in that game. I think it was like 26-1 odds or something. And so I was like, I did not end up doing it. I didn't end up doing it. So I'm like, yeah. And then I'm like, oh no.
That's crazy, because I have known you for, is it 15 years now? I mean, it's been a long time.
Maybe longer,
like,
but
Julian was like 4. Right?
18. Yeah, so probably 14, 15 years.
Yeah. I've never heard that. That's crazy.
Oh, yeah,
like, we've never had that part of our conversation.
It's because I had won the fantasy league and I was like, let me just roll my winnings over. And I didn't do it.
Buried that deep down inside.
I didn't want to admit it.
Well, yeah, I think that's why you hadn't heard it.
I do want to say, though, Bob, going back to Cordarrelle Patterson, like, look, there was a guy, like, who had a lot of talent coming to the NFL, right? Minnesota, like, just didn't live up to what he was supposed to, and, like, kind of revamped his career by like taking on that kick return role, taking on a running back type position, willing to do whatever needed to happen as a blocker too, right? Like, I guarantee you that Ben Johnson would love to have a Cordell Patterson on this team, like a guy that's just not afraid to go out and just rock somebody. Definitely deserving of being on this team, so I'm not mad that he's here.
Yep.
All right.
No, that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed the exercise going through it this week. It was fun to record it and get our thoughts out there.
I'm curious what the Halas Huddlers think. If there are players we totally missed on, let us know. We'd love to hear it. But I think we nailed it.
Oh, of course.
We nailed it. No, there's not a single one of you out there who can tell me differently. And go ahead and try in the comment section. Go ahead. But until then, as always, bear down, claws up.
Ready, break.